I do employee development at IQmetrics, so I kind of focus on our culture and the leadership of employees at IQmetrics. I'm nervous, you can probably tell. I've been told that what I should do is just picture everybody in their underwear. Unfortunately, I'm really bad at visualization, so I have a different plan. What I'd like for, and this will work for the whole session, this will be really helpful for everyone. What I'd like for you to do is just take a quick minute and take off your pants.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Oh, I have been advised that it's not that kind of summit. Okay, sorry. Somebody should have told Greg that last night.
Just gets attacked.
So I'm going to talk about leadership and your leadership style. We've actually had some really interesting conversations already and presentations on leadership, so I hope I can provide you a bit of a different perspective. I've found leadership throughout my career to be sort of this intimidating thing that I didn't quite understand, and I thought was this sort of the big gestures that people did, the people at the front of the crowd saying, "Follow me," and that is an important part of leadership and something that we can value. However, it made a big difference in my life when I started to realize that leadership can also be very small little choices and little behavior things that you make, the choices you make in your own life. And so I'm going to tell you a story about how I sort of came to see that. And then I actually just want to get really practical and talk about a couple of sort of framework models that help me sort of take a look at leadership and make some choices. And as it's about your leadership style, I hope that you can see yourself in these leadership frameworks as well. So I joined IQmetrics about a year ago, and before that, I spent most of my time in government bureaucracy, which may not seem to have a lot to do with retail, but I actually think that when it comes to leadership style, government bureaucracies and retail have one that can be quite common between the two. And we'll take a look at what that leadership style is. It's that very controlling, sort of autocratic, hierarchical leadership style where you're telling people exactly what needs to be done, and you're very, very micromanaging for these folks. And so for most of my government career, that was the model. And so specifically, I was a policy analyst. So I was making advice for government about how to spend their money. I was doing research. I was making recommendations. And I guess we'll say I was pretty good at it, good enough to get a responsibility to manage other folks. And so this is the model that I knew. And so I started to manage other people the way that I had always been managed. My main tool was a red pen, which I would use to swath through their recommendations and tell them they need to change them and that I don't want that to happen because that's a mistake and all those sorts of things. And so basically the model is that I act as the alpha producer to all these other people, and my boss is the alpha producer to me. And if there's a presumption of superiority. And so my boss is better at it than I am, and so he or she is always right, and I'm better at it than everyone that's working with me, and so I always have the trump for those folks as well. There's some challenges with that model, as you can imagine. It's really disengaging for individuals to be in that sort of environment where your boss is always going to make the final call. It also is just completely devoid of diversity. Everything funnels up to this one individual, and that's the perspective and the opinion that's going to count. And so I actually have employees, and in fact, because of the nature of the system, it was me too. You would spend a lot of your time actually just figuring out what your boss needed. And so you weren't doing it just to hide from the issues, but there was no sense in doing things that weren't going to be what was aligned with your boss. And so that's a really challenging place to be. You can have a lot of mistakes happen, and you can have big mistakes happen because there is no additional perspective. There is no sort of overarching view. It's just what that individual wants. And so we want to try and not be that. And so what I did in this very frustrating environment where I wasn't really happy, I started to recognize that the individuals that I was micromanaging and getting them to act in a certain way actually have complete and total ability to make really good solutions. They may just not have the skills, or they may not have the experience that I have or my boss has, but I just need to help them get that skills and experience. And so I think that's actually a pretty easy thing to sort of acknowledge and recognize. The people that you're working with have brains just like yours, and they can figure these things out, though they may not have the skills and the experience that you have. But knowing that fact and then deciding to do something with that fact are very different things. And so what I found myself, I was confronted with this thing where I was known as the guy who could just make fantastic advice. I was the alpha producer. And in fact, that's where all my security came from. That's how I had climbed up the ranks. That's why my boss had promoted me. That's where the pay raises came from. Everything was about being this really good policy analyst. And here I was realizing that the best model to make that organization work was for me to not be that alpha producer, but to help other people do it. This could actually be the end of my presentation, just to say we need to be aware of the behavior that we choose to do to find that security and to help our egos and our security to know that we're that valued. That's not actually the most important thing to grow most organizations. You actually have to build the capacity of everyone to make those recommendations or do that work. And it fixes all those things I talked about. So you don't make as many mistakes, you increase the diversity, and people are way more engaged. So that's sort of part one of my experience and what I want to tell you. So that's where I came to see leadership a little bit different. Now I'm going to talk about just a few frameworks of leadership. And what I want to point out is that at one extreme, you've got someone who's really controlling, someone that just micromanages everything. And now after you've heard my very eloquent speech about the challenge with controlling, we're going to say, okay, well, maybe we'll just trust people. We'll just let them go and do their thing. But the challenge is that if you just trust people, you can actually go to the other extreme. And I think it's a lot less common, this extreme, but it's an extreme of abandonment. So you say, instead of telling you exactly what to do, I'm not going to tell you I'm just, yeah, you can do it. You'll figure this out. I mean, I was once in your place, and I figured it out too. The problem is that you leave people in a lurch because they have no assistance. They don't have anybody to help them with that skill and experience sort of path that they need to go on. So the two extremes are this controlling and abandoning. But fortunate for us, there's a space between those where we have some options. So I've been congratulated that I actually used animation for a purpose there. So I was pretty happy about that. So this is just one of many models for you to consider leadership styles. But on the extreme, or between the extremes of control and abandon, we've got a couple that I just want to characterize for you. One being that you could be a supervisory sort of leader, which is to say that you still create structure and you still have control, but you maybe create a bigger sandbox. So in a controlling environment, you might just tell people that when I need to buy something, I will come to you with a purchase order and tell you what I need filled out, and you will do the typing, because that's laborious and I don't want to do that sort of work. So that's what you do in a controlling environment. Perhaps in a supervisory environment, you actually give some people some structure about the kind of purchasing choices they can make. So you might just say, when we need to make a purchase, I want you to figure out how to do a purchasing order as best you can. Or you can say, you totally threw me off, Clayton. You could also say, you have a spending limit of $5,000 and make your best choices with that. In the release style, you would actually just steer from the back. And you would say, I trust you to make those choices, but I'm going to follow you around, or I'm going to have a weekly meeting with you where I'm going to coach you on what happened, what the implications of that choice were, and help you figure out and develop more experience on that sort of release model. So I'm going to move through these a little quick. That animation doesn't actually help anything other than I don't want him walking on the stairs. So another way to look at this is the employee experience on this sort of spectrum, which is you can have these models where you can see the invitation the employee gets. And at one extreme, it's wait until told, and at the other extreme, it's do it. And so I'm going to run out of time, but I encourage you to come and find me after so we can talk about these if you're more interested.